Roar!
Ew.
Hello and welcome to Midnight Readings. Today we'll be reading Carry Me Home, written by Propmaster. This is a multi-chapter story, so let's get to it. Rainbow Dash. Spike laid on the grass and watched the rainbow-coloured blur in the sky as it pirouetted through another complex series of tricks. Rainbow Dash was at it again, pushing her limits and testing new stunt ideas. And Spike had been around long enough to know that she'd need a spotter for her inevitable break. She always pushed herself too far these days, seeking that next great height, that next peak. There was almost desperation to it, one that Spike worried over at times. As he'd grown older and larger, his pony friends, his family, had changed as well. He stood nearly head and shoulders taller than all of them, these days. Something that Rainbow often commented on when they met. She'd call him Squirt still, but there was something in her tone that made it wistful. She often flew up to his head height rather than address him from the ground, as though she couldn't quite accept talking up to him. He humoured her, of course, because she was the one pony that worried the most over sort of things. His thoughts were interrupted by a thunderous clap of sound that drew his eyes up to the skies. Rainbow Dash had pulled some kind of crazy move and the clouds overhead had burst with the force of whatever she'd just done. Rainbow hung in the apex of a climb, wings wide, head pointed to the sky, eyes closed. She was weightless, suspended in a brief moment of perfection, and the smirk on her muzzle told Spike that she was about to do something stupid. The moment broke. Rainbow's wings tucked to her sides and she fell like a stone from the sky, speeding towards the ground. Her eyes were still closed, mane fluttering behind her like a fallen pennant. Spike stood, his jaw clenching in concern, as he followed her progress down, down, down. She picked up her speed, her wings tight and her body angled. She approached the ground, and to Spike's eyes, it looked as though it was rising to meet her. Spike had watched Rainbow Dash pull all stunts like this before, but she had never brought herself as close to disaster as she was at this moment. His eyes narrowed, judging her airspeed, her distance. He started to run towards her then. She wasn't going to make it. There was no way. She wasn't as spry as she'd been 10 years ago. And no matter the new trick she'd gained in her career with the Wonderbolts, she couldn't beat physics as soundly as it was about to beat her. He grit his teeth, following her progress as he approached at the dead sprint, dropping down on all fours and holding his wings tight to his body to prevent drag. Rainbow's eyes snapped open, her smirk becoming a devilish grin, and she started to flap, increasing her own speed, fully giving in to the pull of gravity and surpassing her own terminal velocity. Spike's eyes widened, and he poured on the speed. Was she trying to kill herself? What was her plan? Suddenly Spike noticed it. The make cone, forming right in front of Rainbow Dash as she hit deadly speeds. Perhaps only 50 feet from the ground. It was impossible. She didn't have the wing power. She'd never pull a rainbow so low to the ground. She was going to splatter into a plasmic explosion. He pulled up short, clenching his teeth together, realizing that there was nothing he could do but watch, and hope that she could defy everything his head was telling him was about to happen. Rainbow Dash screamed a wild war cry that bubbled up from her throat, and a rainbow burst flattened the grass and knocked Spike to his back. Her wings angled, her body turned, and she pulled up. Her belly brushed the grass as she blew across the open field, hit a slight rise in the terrain, and one of her back legs touched the ground. The friction of the strike at the insane speed disrupted her flight, and her frame shuddered as her lower body attempted to go one way, while her upper body attempted to go another. Her back folded and her limbs went wild. Her wings flared and she crashed. She tumbled over and over, cartwheeling and rolling, bouncing off the earth as her body bled kinetic energy, and feathers and grunts of pain. She finally stopped, having dug a furrow through the field that was nearly 50 yards long. Spike rolled onto his feet, staring wide-eyed at her inherent form on the grass, laying in a broken heap. He swallowed, staring, willing her to move, to breathe, to... Rainbow Dash laughed. It was a wheezing, pained thing, but it was unmistakable. Her voice squeaked with gasps of air as she panted and chuckled. She stood up, favouring one leg, both wings a mess, and she let out a loud whoop of excitement. She turned, her nose bloody, her coat dirty, and her mane askew. Her voice broke as she spoke, but her eyes burned with enthusiasm. Did you see that? Spike stared at her, eyes wide, and he nodded, dumbly. Rainbow Dash laughed again, collapsing to her haunches as she heaved for breath, her wings going limp as her body shook with exertion and pain. Spike approached her carefully, and she collapsed onto her back as she smiled, defying his every notion that she should probably be dead. But there she was, as she always had been. Bloody, bruised, but never broken. She was beautiful. In that moment, her very spirit on display, her soul bare before Spike as she laid in the exuberant wreckage of her near disaster. She was always pushing her limits, and had yet to find them. She was the best, and in that moment she knew it. A sonic rainboom at 50 feet? Impossible! No one would believe her, but she'd done it, and that was enough for her. Spike crouched next to her, watching her as she panted, her tongue lolling out of her mouth, her eyes closed, and a smile grazing her lips. Spike sighed, reaching over and wiping some grass and dirt off her coat. Rainbow winced as he brushed what was possibly going to become a series of massive bruises, and she opened her eyes to look at him. What did I tell you? Still got it. Spike shook his head and chuckled, despite his concern. Yes, Rainbow Dash, you still got it. His voice rumbled now, no longer the high-pitched and bubbly thing that it had been. Rainbow laughed, and then gritted her teeth as the laugh became a whine, and she clenched her forelegs over her chest, wheezing. Oh, goddess, it hurts. Laughing hurts. What doesn't hurt? Spike asked, giving her a once-over. Rainbow grew still for a moment, assessing her body, and then grimaced and chuckled weakly. Nothing? Right, Spike said, nodding to himself, and reached out gingerly and picked her up, cradling her in his arms. Rainbow Dash stiffened up, glaring at him. Come on, Squirt, I'm not a broken doll here. Spike frowned at her. Sure, if you're so fine, then stop me. Rainbow wriggled weakly in his arms, grunting and then settled down, wincing and wiping her bloody nose with one hoof. She pouted. I'll be okay in a minute. Spike smirked and stood up, his wings opening slightly for balance, and he began walking back towards Ponyville. Rainbow grumbled to herself, shifting slightly in his arms, but eventually quietened down. Spike hoped she'd accept that she'd pushed herself a bit too hard today. He didn't think it was likely, but he could hope. He kept a weather eye on the patch ahead, carrying an injured Pegasus towards the edge of Ponyville. Rainbow Dash frowned up at him. My house is the other way. We're not going to your house. We're going to Fluttershy's house, Spike said evenly. Rainbow Dash's eyes widened in surprise, and then her ears folded back. Oh, come on! I'm fine! I've suffered way worse than this. I don't need Fluttershy's mother henning over me, and giving me sad eyes and sniffling because she felt bad for me. That'll make me feel worse. Good, that's the idea, Spike replied, frowning down at her. Rainbow Dash raised an eyebrow at him, frowning. What gives? I thought we were bros! No, Rainbow. We're going to Fluttershy's house, and you're going to have to deal with it. You could have killed yourself today. Frankly, you're lucky you didn't break every bone in your body, or shatter your wings, or any number of other injuries. Rainbow Dash rolled her eyes. Pfft, yeah, but I didn't. I totally had it. You're not young anymore, Rainbow Dash, Spike said, glaring down at her. Rainbow's objection died in her throat, and she stared up at him. Spike stopped dead in his tracks, staring down the small Pegasus in his arms, cradling her with the utmost care, and he felt his eyes water. You aren't young anymore, Rainbow. You can't keep doing stuff like this. You're going to kill yourself. I know you're afraid of changing and you're afraid of falling behind, but this isn't the way to deal with it. These stunts. They put you on leave from Wonderbolts for a reason. Reckless behavior, endangering yourself, untested flight stunts. He swallowed, staring at her. You're so important, Rainbow Dash. You're so special, and we need you. I need you. Who's going to keep giving me flight lessons? I just grew into these dumb things, Spike said, shaking his wings. And if you end up breaking your neck doing something stupid, where will I be? Twilight isn't much of a flight instructor, and Fluttershy might as well be an earth pony for all she used her wings. So, Spike stared at her. His words died in his throat as her expression reached him. Rainbow's ears folded back, and her eyes were watering. Both hooves clutched at his chest, clinging to him, and she shook. Spike almost dropped her, but she pulled herself against him and began to cry. Spike found himself clutching Rainbow Dash as she gasped and sobbed. Between sniffles she spoke. I know you're right. I'm just so afraid. You're right. You're so big, Spike. You're a dragon. These kids, new reserve bolts, and I see them doing the tricks I invented. But they're faster and better and improving, and I'm just still me. I'm sorry. Spike held her close, stroking her mane gently, careful of her injuries. It's okay, Rainbow. I'm sorry too. You scared me. I'm sorry. It's okay. You're going to have to figure it out, Rainbow Dash. But this isn't the way to do it. Have to find new envelopes to push, new ways to be the best. We all believe in you, Rainbow. You know that? He could feel Rainbow nod her head against him, her breath becoming a hitching gasps and little hiccups. She leaned back into his arms, and he stared down at her. Rainbow Dash stared back, wiping her face with one muddy fetlock, and she managed a fierce grin. Okay, new envelopes. I can do that. Okay, Spike said, smiling uncertainly. You're not mad at me? Rainbow snorted and winced. No, I maybe needed to hear that from somebody that wasn't my captain, or one of the girls. Twilight and Fluttershy have said stuff like this, but coming from you? I don't know, Spike. It's different hearing it from the kid that used to ride on Twilight's back. Maybe if you can see it, then it's really time to do something about it. Spike chuckled. I guess so, huh? He started walking again, holding Rainbow carefully as she lay back, looking up at the sky. She smirked. Plus, it wouldn't be very loyal of me to go and get myself splattered before I finish teaching you how to get off the grind with those new wings of yours. Spike smiled down at her. I never doubted your loyalty, Rainbow Dash. Rainbow sighed, closing her eyes as she relaxed in his arms. At least that'll never change. By the time Spike got to Fluttershy's cottage, the exhaustion and emotional outburst had caught up to her, and she was sleeping soundly, curled up against his chest. Aww! There's a reason why I wanted to read these stories. And I should let you know. Next up is Fluttershy. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep watching that moon! And a howling thank you to my Patreons.